All right, good morning. What's going on? It's Sunday. It's not quite raining. It's been raining and spitting snow. And figure I'd go ahead and I'd do like a live show where we actually talk about comics and stuff, right? No use in using that new format because it's just us. And before I get into the comic books, I'm going to throw out something. I've been having quite a time with this DVD set, and now I've ended up with a really crappy packaging of one. But if you were anywhere near a certain age, and you remember when Indiana Jones popped up back in what was it, 81, and it just blew everybody's mind. I mean, it was like a one-two punch. Star Wars got us, and then we had Indiana Jones. But a TV show came out. This TV show was called Tales of the Golden Monkey, and this is pretty cheap at Walmart. I figure because it's the entire season, and it only lasted one season. I think this was like in 1982. But it's fun, but it won't play. I don't know what the deal is. I have two DVD players and a third DVD portable little television DVD player. It won't play in those, but it'll play in the computer. I don't know what the deal is. So I kept taking it back and kept taking it back to eventually I got one. I ended up having to just trade it in because it's electronics and stuff, man. But this is just a wholesome little show. You got to remember that it's in 1982, supposed to be set in the 40s out on some Pacific islands, and it's in the spirit of Indiana Jones, and it has a one-eyed dog named Jack, who to me is the real star, right? So I've been in, Leo out there seems to remember this show. So yeah, it's at Walmart. It's been quite the chore. I've never worked so hard to watch a show. So that's kind of what I've been trying to do. But like I said, I have to watch on the laptop. I don't know if the DVDs are so thin. I don't know what the deal is. But if anybody has gotten this and they're having problems playing it, or they want to tell me why it won't work in two DVD players, let me know. Okay, so as you can see from the title of the show here, we're talking about some comic books that are frameable. And I'm actually doing this because since I have moved into the new house with the fiance, I've got a small room to make into a comic book room. I've been purging, buying little short boxes when I can, and I've run across quite a few of my comic books, like, hey, I forgot about that. But this could change day to day. Now, some of the comic books I'm showing today, I've always had in mind to go ahead and frame them and hanging them up, but just never got around to it. Now that we have limited space, I mean, I've taken some of these to work in my office and hanging up. So some of the things that I've had for years, two of them have broke over the years, so I should have used them. But years ago at Hobby Lobby, I got these frames, and you can see that it's a glass frame. You can see them back in the front, and they're made exactly for hanging your comic books, right? I've had these for years. I don't know if you can get them. I don't know if they're even out there. I haven't seen them, but these were on like a clearance sale at Hobby Lobby. Hey, what's up, Stephen Moore? Right, so I've got one, two of these, and then I got two more that actually have comics. So one is busted. Set that over there. So yeah, these have been cursed and they keep busting. This one is this has busted during the move. We have glass that is inside the frame, which I won't get out. And one of the things I have places, and it really surprised me because I've actually seen interviews and video of John Byrne on YouTube over the years saying that the correct place to sign a comic book is on the inside front page, right? So to see that he artistically signed his name on there, and I got this for like $1. I couldn't believe it, right? But somebody was selling it for $15. Comes with a certificate of authenticity, or I wouldn't have even shown this. So that's one of the things I do have framed, and this is a fantastic story. This was John Byrne's swan song on Superman. It was just fantastic. The Executioner. Oh, thanks. Yeah, but yeah, I love this. It was fantastic. It's dark. Superman does kill, and it had ramifications after he left. Let me set that over there. Okay, so like I said, I have another one, and now one of the other covers, I'm probably going to take this out. I'm a huge Brian Boland fan, like almost anybody. And one of the things I already have framed before I get to the comics is this fantastic Eagle Comics, where we get some 2000 AD reprints of Judge Dredd, and this is the one where yes, this man is covered in mushrooms. It's even on his tongue. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, it's the fact that they're on his tongue and inside his mouth that struck me on this. I like covers that can be a conversation piece, that are unique, that do an emotion. I actually end up treating it like high art, so that's fantastic. Here we go. Stephen Moore, my favorite Superman run. Burns' run is it's amazing how it's overrated over the years after the big after how big it was when it came out, and it did not disappoint. Terry Hopper, the priest having blessed the young ladies, and it was a fun series with a star who fell from grace in recent years. But yeah, I love this cover. I don't know if I want to keep it going though. Now the thing, like I said, about picking comic books to hang up is I think there's some gorgeous comics, and then I can see another one, and it's all about what I think it's going to be. Because I've always been, that's one of the things about this channel. I've always treated at least the art of the comic books seriously, right? I think it's a legitimate art form. Why overrated are Burn runs on Man of Steel? Ross Sanders. Why overrated are Burn runs on Man of Steel Superman? Man of Steel and Superman. I don't think they're overrated. I think they don't get enough credit. I don't think people realize what he did. You know, I think people need to read like 2 or 3 years of Superman runs before Byrne came on. There was Byrne came on and just rejuvenated that book. I mean, it was the talk of the town. It brought people in who didn't collect comics. It brought them into comic book shops, spinner racks, drugstores, wherever they could pick it up back then when it came out. I saw people on my school bus carrying the Man of Steel miniseries before the Superman book hit. Everybody got excited about having a Superman #1. And he set up plot lines. I don't really think that John Byrne, I think, had some. There was a thing that I don't talk about much because I've never really gotten the full story enough to talk about it. But apparently, Marvel became real close to putting out the DC comics, and Byrne wanted Superman, so he had some pages ready to go in case, so he could throw his hat in the ring while he was still at Marvel. He kind of used, I think he used those pages in Man of Steel #1, maybe, I think. I don't know. He used the pages somewhere in his early run, but I didn't feel like Superman really took off with John Byrne proper until I think it was Superman #3, which was a Legends crossover where we went full out New Gods and Dark Side. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, before that, this kind of became bland. A lot of people, Alan Moore was the only one really coming out with some great Superman stories pre-crisis. Marv Wolfman and Gil Kane had a fantastic little run there at the beginning. They brought in George Perez to redesign Brainiac and Lex Luthor. I mean, there was still some good stuff there. It just wasn't consistent. One of my favorite Superman stories of that era was actually one of the few, probably the only Superman story Kurt Swan helped write, called I Flew with Superman, where he ends up meeting Superman and trying to get back to our Earth Prime. It was a very touching, story for a comic book as much as it could be. Ross Sanders, I like John Byrne on the Fantastic Four and X-Men with Chris Claremont. Yep. And Alpha Flight. The art of Superman looks nice now, but I still wouldn't buy it. Yeah, well, in the modern comics, Now, one of the things I'm going to show here, I've got some of these frames here. I have a bunch of Rolling Stone covers, and basically I'm just going to keep probably one or two of those, the X-Files related ones. But I have covers like this. I need to mat these. And I have some oversized books that might fit in these. So this is the kind of thing I'm looking at. Like I said, I got limited space and a bunch of posters and movie posters and stuff. So now we're down to the comics. All right. So that gives you an idea what I can do. I got 3 or 4 frames going on here. I got some stuff I can reuse, some old frames. I'm actually thinking about giving it a shot, spray paint some of those brown frames black. Yeah, just whatever, I've been planning on doing this forever, but it looks like I'm finally going to get around to it. Tom Bagley, Jim Shooter's website says DC was going to license their books to Marvel to publish in 1987, but the deal fell through in 1984. Excuse me. Byrne was so excited he drew a perspective cover for Superman #1. Right. I read, when John Byrne took over the Superman books and was coming at it, I have something somewhere where he talks about he had some pages ready to go. He just sort of was like doing a study and for fun of Superman, and the pages in question never really got resolved. It was just Superman busting through a wall and finding this little, I don't know if it was a lab, but it was definitely a lair, and somebody had been studying Superman, and I don't remember it ever really saying who did it or whatever it was. It was just sort of like a day in the life of Superman busting through the wall. He just didn't want to in my opinion, Byrne never really wastes anything, and he will recycle stuff. John Byrne was the first writer to bring true continuity to the character. Yeah, I think the only big mistake that Byrne did, and I actually think he said, I think, I've read a lot of interviews over the day back before internet, but I think he did admit that maybe not having a Superboy was a mistake, because I really messed up a lot of stuff uh, with, Legion of Superhero wise and a few other little stories. Okay, I still have my China Playboy issues. Nice. Okay, China the Wrestler. Okay, man. All right. What we got here? Scott Neely is like, I'm about to take some stuff out to the shed to make room for more comics. That is a chore. Ross Sanders comics. Any Watchmen covers you like? I've got a set. Yeah, I like all the Watchmen covers. Number 2 especially. But if you'd watch my older videos on top of my bookshelf in the old apartment and stuff, I had probably about 6. I think I had 6 framed Watchmen comics, and they were just beat up comics I found in quarter bins over the years and stuff, just so I could frame them. I do have a 12. I do have a mint set of the Watchmen books. The 12-issue series, the original 12-issue miniseries, and 6 of them have never been read. So they've never been touched. Brian Craig, I just want to say a big thank you for introducing me to the Goon. I can't find the 3rd library edition for under $200. Oh my gosh, really? I wonder if that's where it's out of print. Goon is a great book. I know Goon is back, but I just don't get around to reading it lately. I just don't buy a lot of new comics. I'll probably be able to back up and get some of those if I hear good things. Actually, it has a lot to do with Eric Powell really getting political online here and there, and I'm just not really interested. What do we got here? Oh, and no problem, Brian. Hopefully, I can steer you towards some other books and stuff. I have a huge backlog of videos and stuff that you might be able to play around with if you get bored. Stephen Moore, I seem to remember Peter David's Supergirl being good. I have the last, I don't know what it was, 6 issue story of his run, which I love because he brought in the Silver Age Supergirl. Wrote this fantastic little story working her in there, and it had a John Romita Sr. cover, the one that I have of him with Supergirl holding an American flag, I think, on the moon or something. And that ended up being a great. That's really all I read of his run. He had a book. Oh my God, what was it? Fallen Angel. That a lot of people thought that he was trying to bring back Supergirl secretly. So what we got here? And the Hulk Peter David run, meta before Deadpool. Yeah, I remember a few issues. I remember the issue where I think who was doing the art? Liam Sharp may have been doing the art and stuff, but he had an issue that cracked me up because he had the Hulk wearing a helmet with a fin on it, and it was a shot at the Savage Dragon. But that Hulk Peter David run is classic. I wish I had every issue, I think, of it. I actually tried at one point. I have quite a few, but I had 2 boxes of comics stolen from me when I was moving out of Roanoke in 2010. They were taken right off the U-Haul, and it was my Hulk run, my Kirby Fantastic Four, my Silver Age Hulk, the Peter David Hulk. That hurt. Man of Steel #1 has a blizzard in Kansas. Keep the Kents from going to town for 6 months. That's some snowstorm. I tell you what, I remember being a kid and just here in Virginia, I remember snowstorms that kept people in for 2 to 3 months. But Jared, they also turned around, and when Millennium, was it Millennium? Which one had the Manhunters all of a sudden? Anyway, they ended up saying that it was a conspiracy by the Manhunters that caused that snowstorm. They kind of retconned that a little bit. And then he also had, John Byrne did 3 miniseries. One was The World of Smallville, The World of Krypton, The World of Metropolis. And I think in one of them, he may have also talked about that blizzard a little bit. Lana Lang ended up being an agent, secretly an agent for the Manhunters, I think. Scott Connor, yep, that one had a lower print run than the others, and it's very hard to find. Okay, he's talking out there. Hey, Paulo Costa, what's up, brother? Getting ready to show some comic books here. Just doing a little chat here. Ross Sanders, have you read any French comics, Tim? Please, or Kiss comics? Yeah, I read some Tardy. I've got some Tardy books in here. Fog Over Some Bridge, and then the one where he's in the Antarctic that Fantagraphics in America has put out. I've talked about Tardy before. Of course, Mobius. Then I have some French cartoons that Mobius had a little bit to do with and stuff, right? And as far as Kiss comics, I just I've read a few Kiss comics. I go back to that Marvel Super Special with their blood in it and stuff. I've actually got the beat up copy that I've had since a kid that my stepdad bought at a 7-Eleven in Johnson City, Tennessee, when we were on our way to see them in concert. So yeah, I saw Kiss when I was like 4, but I was taken out of the concert when Gene Simmons started painting his face red with the fake blood. Hulk Future Imperfects is magnificent. It's the days of future past for Hulk. I know a lot of people will chastise me for this one, but I actually enjoy Future Imperfect better than Days of Future Past. But I have a real feeling that the Chris Claremont Days of Future Past was with Byrne was first, so I think that says a lot right there. Here we go. If Kiss Comics reflected what the band does nowadays, they'd be photocopied. That's stuff, Connor. That's hilarious. Okay, guys, so showing some of the comic books I think are the covers are frameable. I can go through my collection and come up with stuff. Brian Bolin. I mean, you got people who are superstars. Sinkovich covers, Brian Bolin covers, Perez covers, Alex Ross covers, and things like that. So I kind of try to go for things that either like set a mood or feel like they're from a time period, or they just sort of, like I said, maybe they could just be high art and stuff. And one of these, I'm not even sure who did this. I think it's Carl Potts. This is probably from 1983. But there's a lot of covers from the 80s I love simply because of how they're painted in the mood, the heavy blacks. They started doing like this thing where the coloring really was sort of like has a transparent look that kind of makes it a little bit more realistic. They really stuck out. You also got to remember this was a time where, like in Marvel, what was it, Team Up or Marvel 2-in-1 or something, and Namor, they started having people who were actors wearing the costumes, and they would take a picture of them dressed like Spider-Man or Captain America and then put them on a magazine cover with a fake background. Some of the stuff was bad, but then all of a sudden you had stuff like this, which I think was fantastic at the time. I mean, his hair, just everything about this. But for some reason, I think heavy blacks really draw me in. So this is one. This is Doctor Strange number 63. But I just love that cover. Never read the book inside. Never read the story that I can remember. Wow, I'll read some comments here in a minute. Now, the other thing I got here is that I love this story, right, to begin with. Everything that Mike Allred did in this, I'm not going to take it out of the bag, right? But there was a story, the history of rock and roll, thanks to an alien called Red Rocket 7. And I really don't know if this is going to show up, if it's going to focus. But what is fantastic that Mike Allred did with this is, of course, we have the Sgt. Pepper's Beatles Sgt. Pepper, album cover, but he put in a lot of other people. There's Sonic Youth in there. We have Gene Simmons with Kiss that people have been talking about, the rock and roll stuff, David Bowie, T-Rex, Led Zeppelin, of course, the Beatles at the end, Jim Morrison, Madonna. He snuck in a lot of people, but that's one of the things Courtney Love over here. There's a lot of people in here you can get in there. And Mike Allred to put so many people on a cover and actually make it to where you can see who they are. I see Elton John. I feel like I'm playing Romper Room. I see you, and all this stuff. So I'd really like to frame this. Red Rocket 7 is a fantastic series to read, especially if you're a fan of, like I said, David Bowie, The Who, Red Rocket, Little Richard, and the way that he takes the trends over the decades of music and puts them in here with Red Rocket 7. He even has a reason why music really started sucking there for a little bit. A little price tag. And it was a Legend imprint that I was telling people, right? So yeah, I love this. It's got Iggy, Iggy and his band and everything. Just fantastic. That's a fantastic cover. Okay, what do we got here? Last year I bought a Phantomos French comic that had been published in English by Titan Comics. Interesting art style, more indie than what you expect from the adventure thriller. Yeah, and I'm really wanting to go that way with buying more things that are from Europe over here. There's just, I heard Mobius once say that if an artist is starting to draw and wants to get into, the comics and stuff, he said not to read American comics. What do we got here? Okay, Scott Connor. For me, the artist that has to be the most that has the most covers for high quality would have to be Mike Kaluta. This is true. Scott Connor is a huge Kaluta fan. Connor, you met him. That's the guy you have pictures of with you and Charles Vess, right? Hanging out. Mike Kaluta has some amazing covers. Gone. You just never know where they're going to pop up. Vertigo covers, Conan covers, everything. The man's amazing. Stephen Moore says he loves Ed McGuinness covers on Superman. Nice blocky art. The thing about McGuinness that blows my mind, that I kind of makes me smile because I've seen him do some He-Man stuff, is that his style is. I feel like he took a bunch of He-Man action. Excuse me, He-Man action figures from the '90s, and that's what he uses as the model. Everything he does. Ross Sanders, Gil Kane. Gil Kane was a machine, especially in the '70s with all the covers that he did. Gil Kane covers are fantastic. There's always this quality he had at Marvel that really was better than his DC stuff. I could never figure out what that was about. Was he just happier at Marvel, or I don't know what happened? But I always felt like his Marvel stuff was much more inspired. Scott Neely, did anyone else here go to the Ultimate Comics warehouse? I don't know. Let's see. Russ Heath had some of the fantastic covers. Now, Scott Connor, our buddy Tim Anderson, he's been getting these Russ Heath Sea Devils from the Silver Age. He's building up quite a collection with these beautiful covers that Russ Heath did back in the day. So anybody doesn't know Russ Heath, you might want to go back and look at his stuff. And I think Russ Heath was the guy that was ripped off by a pop artist, to where they took a panel from his war comic, recreated it on canvas, and he put it in an art gallery, and it became famous. And for some reason, that artist that ripped off Russ, I hope I'm talking about the right guy, gets all the credit in the world for ripping off Russ Heath. That blows my mind. All right. So something else I want to maybe find a way to hang up besides just putting two frames beside each other is like, I love covers where you really have to get into the hobby to find out they exist, right? Here's a Astonishing Tales Deathlock book by Keith Pollard. I think it's Keith Pollard. Rich Buckler, excuse me. Rich Buckler. I think this is 1976. And then you jump up to 1979, and for no reason at all, we have Keith Pollard recreating that cover with Nick Fury in Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Not a lot of people know that. Now, I've done a whole video about connecting covers and secret little crossovers and stuff, right? But I love homage covers, especially the ones that have not been done to death 1,000 times. So I'd like to find some way, or a frame big enough or something, some way to put these together. I think what's more pleasing, there's a rule of 3 on composition to make a very interesting composition to your eye, and I can't quite figure out how to do this one. So I think it'd probably be, I frame it like this, have them mirror one another. But I really found those quite interesting, right? And going on with the Nick Fury thing, here's my Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 4, signed by Jim Steranko. I'm very proud of this for some reason. Very proud of this. I've yet to frame it. I toss it around like it's nothing, which is far from the truth. There's his Jim Steranko's signature. But what I want to do is take some of these homage covers that's been done over the years, and probably have them like set in 4 over a door frame. Okay. And there's probably more out there, but I have 4 of them. If I dug, it seems like I have 5 or 6. Seems like I know some other ones here, right? So we have a whole bunch of homage covers of, to me, this is one of the best comic book covers of all time. Jim Steranko was bringing in pop art into comics with that James Bond feel, which was big in the 60s and stuff like that. And he just went for it on this cover. I thought that was fantastic. Scott Connor, you are the artist in question was Lincolnstein. Thank you, Scott Connor. The guy that ripped off Russ Heath was Lincolnstein. Would figure that he had a name that sounded like a creator of monsters. Frank Frazetta on when they pull his stuff, his paintings and stuff to put him on a comic book cover. It's been done quite a bit. I don't think he's done any original comic book work, in my opinion, since The Shining Knight in the 50s that I can think of, and some EC Comics stuff. I really liked how Lucifer from the comics is straight up Bowie and all his different incarnations. Yeah, Neil Gaiman did that on purpose. Asked for that. I've got the book or an interview where he talks about it. People seem to really forget that. That's why I like when I talk to people about the Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman. When they know little details like that, I know these people I'm talking to are the real deal, and you'd be amazed how few and far between they are. Hey, Rob Ripa's there. Fantastic. Go watch Rob Ripa's stuff. He's a fantastic musician and composer. Yeah, Terry Hooper, excuse me. Terry Hooper, Arad's new Bowie book looks incredible. Yeah, I'm wanting to pick it up. Mike Arad is actually one of the people that's decent on Twitter. Okay. Now, a throwback of a book here. I've got a couple here. Probably definitely just one more than the other one to hang this one up, man. But this is Superboy starring the Legion of Superheroes 197. I found this. It's got a little bit of what have we got here? A little dog ear corner and stuff. This is not a mint book, but by no means it's still in better shape than other ones I've seen. But it's this fantastic Dave Cockrum Timberwolf cover of him just sitting there handing the Legion their asses all through here as they're all going after him. Now, what's amazing about this is I think this is a 1973. Don't quote me on that one. And yes, it's Dave Cockrum, but the thing about it is that look at Timberwolf there. This is Wolverine before there was a Wolverine. That's what's amazing about it. So some of the things that Dave Cockrum was responsible for with the design of Wolverine are right here, on this cover. The story, one of the reasons that Timberwolf has had a little bit of a fan following, little cult following with Legion fans and people who aren't even Legion fans, is that this is Wolverine before there was a Wolverine. I mean, Wolverine is not a ripoff of Timberwolf, in my opinion. But even when they brought Dave Cockrum on the X-Men books, he got to do a design of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, which was the Legion of Superheroes, and they played around. They even got Wolverine and the character that they based off of Timberwolf and the Imperial Guard. It was all tongue in cheek, and then they acknowledged it. That's why I think it's so funny. But this is just a fantastic early Cockrum cover. Some of the Cockrum covers from the 70s are just fantastic. I think it's Hulk 203 or something, but he's inside the mouth of a gigantic warthog when he's gone down into the microverse and saw Jarella. The purples, I like cover for some reason. Covers with purples seem to pop out, and they knew it. Back in the day, they said that I think the two ways to get people to notice a cover is to have it be the color purple or have an ape on it. For some reason, those books had a rise in sales. But yeah, to me, this is just a classic cover. This is something I would put front and center. This one's definitely going to be framed. All right, Dr. Silver Age is in. He's right there with me on the Timberwolf cover. Fantastic. Who worked with Claremont? Chris Claremont. A couple people did. I'm not sure. You had Claremont, Byrne, Paul Smith, John Romita, John Romita Jr., quite a few people over the years. Okay, cool. All right. And now this is another one. Now the thing about it is I've talked about Legion. Everybody knows if you watch this that Legion was one of the first books I read as a kid that really hooked me. That the uncle and stepdad didn't really seem to be in. And we got a Giant Adventure Comics number 403 presents. And yes, I believe this is not an original. It's 25 cents, 403. Can't figure out what year it is, but it has to be the early 70s. But this is a reprint of when the Lightning story came in, where Legion had death in it in the 60s. You got to think about the Legion stories of the Silver Age and kind of put them in perspective if you took time. Bunch of teenage kids inspired by Superboy who, to me, emulate a Silver Age 1,000 years before that didn't exist. But as time goes by, I feel like the superhero stories were romanticized. So that's why they came up with these hokey names like it's Superboy. Well, I'll be Sun Boy. I'll be Cosmic Boy. I'll be Lightning Lad. They're just emulating a time that they think exists. You know what I mean? It's sort of like us talking about King Arthur stories. Think about what real knights were like and how brutal it was and the disease and the nastiness everywhere. Yet we get the idea of, the Camelot and, I mean, you know what I mean? It's been romanticized, even Robin Hood. There was an era in time where people were taking these stories and they were adding romantic elements into it. That's where we got Maid Marian for Robin Hood. They started, making them they were cleaning them up, polishing them up, and adding romance in them and stuff, right? So that's how I've always seen the Legion. But in the midst of these kids hanging out, all from all around the world, hanging out, they even referred to their headquarters as a clubhouse and stuff. They had death come in, and one of the things that Brad Meltzer and Jeff Johns really did in the Lightning Saga back when Brad Meltzer took over the Justice League in the 2000s, and Jeff Johns was heavy into the JSA, and they had their crossover, and it was bringing back here. They had the Lightning Saga, and Superman. We find out they brought back him being Superboy after John Byrne had taken it away. And but one of the things that said is that Superman told the story of the lightning rods that they had to the Justice League, and they were actually like, "What the hell? That's so dark." And that was Superman saying, "Well, that's the difference between a league and a legion." In the league, what would happen is whoever let their lightning rod get struck by lightning, their life force would leave them and would go into Lightning Lad and bring him back to life. For a Silver Age story, this is very freaking dark, and it amazes me that considering what was going on back then, we got the Comics Code Authority that it was approved to go through. Lightning Lad really got put through hell back then. He lost an arm. He got killed. I mean, it was just amazing. And this is one of the first stories of the Legion I remember reading going, this is so dark. I'm like a kid, and I realized how dark this was and was like, who's going to die? What are they going to do? Why would they get rid of somebody? So yeah, this is one for me that if somebody asked about this one, they'd be like, oh God, what did I do? Because they ended up getting a big ramble and a story from me, a big fairy tale. Dave Cockrum, let us not go to Camelot. It is only a model. Shh. Spamalot. All right, now this one right here, I fell completely in love with this comic because I like when they do simple little things. I hope this shows up. But basically, you notice that this is a white comic. That's a lot of negative space, right? And all they did was take gray tones. I don't know if this is watercolor or what it is, but they took gray tones and you're in the snow. I love this stuff. If you go back and read James O'Barr Crow, I love the last few pages of that where he's sitting in the snow at the cemetery and stuff, right? I like when they make your mind fill in the blanks and you see snow and stuff like that. Plus, the little boy blue can blow your horn with a big gigantic wolf there. I love the composition of this. I love the placing of, I really wish they had not even put, the title of the book on there, but just the whole composition of the book, they did a really great job of letting this stand out as a piece of art. I mean, even if wasn't into Fables and I see this thing on a spinner rack, that is enough to make me grab it. The mood of this, the softness of it, the blues, the cool colors, everything like that. This is an image that I could hang on the wall and look at, and it would just have a soothing mood. It would probably like calm my day down. I can look at it and just be taken away and calmed by those colors. So this is Fables, number 134. And this is a book that since I found in a back issue bin probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. This is from December 2013. So I've gotten it anytime after 2013 that I've just kept out. And I'll just sit there and just sort of looked at it every now and then. It's just fantastic. It's by Bingham. I see the signature down here. If it's going to show up. Jerry Bingham, I guess. And I wonder if that's the guy that worked on Sandman a little bit. There's just fantastic stuff in here. Love this cover. That one's definitely being hung up. Brian Craig, I have to buy my comics digitally because I have bad vision. It can get super expensive. Yeah, whatever works for you, man. My vision's going also. All right. Now, this one's not quite a comic book, but I love these things. This goes back to my childhood because He-Man was the stuff. But I love these little storybooks when I can find them, right? The painted covers. I recently finally got the hardbound book that was like all of the Masters of the Universe art that was used on the products and the advertisements and stuff. I mean, the artist that was on them is right up there with Frank Frazetta and Joe Jusko and these people for me, Boris and all these guys. And it was for kids and stuff. But like I said, the 80s, like I said, the blues, the colors, the darkness, it's definitely a period piece. I love these. And there's more out there of these books. sure I could track them down on eBay. I'm sure, and by now the nostalgia probably has them going. But to me, this is the perfect cover. I mean, you got Evil Lyn and Skeletor there, and this harkens back to a Conan story for me. Probably from the Conan the Destroyer where they're trapped in the mirrors, if you know what I'm talking about in those movies. But you got Fisto there. That's so funny. They got Fisto and Ram Man there, which just kind of cracks me up. Now, I really would like to get the other book there where we have him in the swamp with the reptile, I think, finding a giant snake. But I love these things. These are fantastic. What we got here? All right. Now, the two other things here, these are magazines. I've kept these out. I need to go ahead and just bag them a little bit. But it's the first and it's the last issue. And I love these painted covers. Ken Barr, I don't know who did the other one. But this is a magazine that never happened, right? And I really love these Rampaging Hulks when I get them. They're really bizarre. They went ahead and made them to where they weren't in continuity. They decided, right? But it's the first issue of the Rampaging Hulk. Okay. Walt Simonson. It's got a lot of people on here. Doug Munch, Walt Simonson, Alfredo Alcala, John Warner, John Buscema, Rudy Nubers. I mean, yesteryear, this is really great stuff. And we got some Walt Simonson on there, right? Doing some great Kirby-inspired Hulk stuff in there, right? I almost wish I could just get the pages out of these and hang some of them up with those gray tones and stuff like that. It's almost ink wash. It's so good. This is the kind of stuff to me that looks like a comic, and I would totally rip off to do it this way, right? So you have Walt Simonson doing the first story, and there's a little eggs and a nod because here's the Rampaging Hulk, the last issue from '81. And the first thing they do is a little nod to Walt Simonson because they have a little pin up right there in the front, which to me is like, hey, here's the last issue. Walt did the first story. And where the first issue was really harkening back to the, original Kirby Hulk stuff. This one is heavily inspired by the TV show because it opens up with Bruce Banner hitchhiking. I can almost hear the piano music at the beginning of the show. So if you watch the old Bixby show where he was always hitchhiking and he had the piano, I just assume everybody is as old as I am. But this has these stories were really good. They were really good, underrated. They weren't all great, but there was some weird alien stuff in there that had people going, well, hey, is this real or not? So yeah, I definitely want these Hulk magazines. Oh man, look at this. The advertisements back then kills me. Here's some hardback ECW stuff you can get. EC comic stuff you can get. How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Stuart the Rat by Steve Gerber, Gene Colan, stuff I've always wanted to read. That was sort of a kick in the balls to Disney for coming after them for Howard the Duck. And then down here, Boris posters. How I would have been all over this stuff back then if I wasn't 7, 8 years old and had money. So let me show those real good. I kind of got surprised there. And something in one of these books I want to ask, because this has been killing me. I've actually put this online. I've asked the question. I know the advertisement's in one of these. It shouldn't take but a second because you'll know it when I show it to you. But I've always wanted to know who this dude was, what happened to him. Oh my God. Look at this. Look at that art. Hulk smash. Oh, focus. There we go. Oh, good stuff back then. The Goblin. All right. If I don't see it here in a minute, I'm going to move on because I know. As soon as we get off here, I'll be like, there it is. It popped up right away. Unbelievable. Anyway, it'll pop up in another book. Okay, so something else I got here is like every now and then you get artwork where I'm sort of like, there's no way somebody did that for a comic book cover. You know what I mean? Somebody did not just do that for a comic book cover. It has this feel like this is out of their sketchbook, something they were able to revisit and take their time with or something. And I like stuff like that kind of tells a story. You look at something and you're just sort of like, there's something else there. Or maybe somebody was just that damn good. But we're going back to Joe Quesada from 1996 here, man. But I've always loved this cover. It's a Vampirella Rest in Peace cover. I'm not quite sure what this is, but we'll get it focused in there, man. But again, the whites actually make it pop. You follow what I'm saying? I don't think I would have to hang this up and mat this with color to make it pop out because it'll just blend into the wall. If you have white walls, beige walls, or whatever, angry beige. And but I just love this pencil stuff. And there's a look in her eyes where she's slightly looking up. It's little subtleties in this when you look at it. First, it looks like it could just be a sketch study for doing hair or something like that. And then you start looking closer and closer at to it, and there's a mood and there's some emotion. And get down here to the rest and peace. But just having it circled in with a few little framing on its own. The composition is fantastic. The values are very subtle but effective. And then, like I said, there's the little emotion in the eyes there. So what could have basically just been a profile study and stuff has a little bit of something else in there. And then you start looking at it and you can see the cross hatching in it. And he's got little reflections in here and highlights. It's one of those, you can just sit there and just stare at that and take it apart. Just looking at it. It's fantastic. So good. Yeah, Paulo Costa is right there with what I was talking about, the aliens and the rampaging Hulk, the Kylorian conspiracy that was retconned by Bill Mantlo to the regular Hulk comic book. A little Incredible Hulk history there for you. ECW, there should be a comic story where the wrestlers are all monsters, much like the old C comic Foul Play, where they were baseball players. Weird Science, Mick Mignola, Hellboy. That's cool. And now this one I really, really like. Actually, you probably saw me pull this from one of my videos where I'm purging my comics. This is Usagi Yojimbo from Dark Horse Comics number 134. And I just love the composition, the mood that the rain puts on there, and the fact that it's got a frog. It's balanced out with a pop of color down here at the bottom of it. The rain, the hat, the gear, just everything about this I just absolutely love. And then especially this down here, the subtle little mushrooms, the moss, the choice of color for the frog to be gold instead of like what people usually go with green. Something so simple with a lot of thought, and it just pops off the cover. It established some distance where we're seeing Usagi walking in the rain, and like I said, it sets a mood, much like this Vampirella cover. So I like things where I can look at it and it's just pleasing to the eye, and it just kind of sets a mood. I mean, you actually look at something like this and you walk into a room and it's infectious. It's infectious. Now, like I said, I picked up some beat up stuff here, but I love Sienkiewicz covers from the 80s because when I met Sienkiewicz at Heroes Con, one of the first things that came out of my mouth, I think I was maybe starstruck for like a whole 10 seconds, to be honest with you, but he was very nice in person. But first thing came out of my mouth before I knew it, I just looked at him and I was like, didn't even say hello or anything, but I was like, I said, I get the same feel and emotion stirred up looking at your art as I do with H.R. Geiger. And he just kind of looked at me like that was a huge compliment. And we finally got to talk, right? But some of the stuff that he did, even if the book is crap, is his covers, of course, were fantastic. He was coming out of looking like Neil Adams. If you go look at his Fantastic Four stuff in the 220s, I think, and maybe some of his Moon Knight stuff when he started out in comics, at least. And he was slowly and surely turning into his own style that was just amazing. Like you'd see the stuff and it was like nothing you've seen before in comics, especially when you're a kid. And of course, we have this little nod to Thriller here, Michael Jackson's Thriller, Chiller. I probably have about 3 or 4 copies of this cover. And as you can see, it's been marked on and stuff like that. This one's beat up, but I grabbed these just specifically so that I can hang them up. I mean, I'm not going to read these, but this cover is just fantastic. Again, it's got the cool colors, the blues. It's got that mood. I mean, she's coming in, and he does just enough to where you can tell it's Thriller with that red jacket without going too far with it. So if you were there, what was I, 10 when this came out? This is 1984, so I was 11. Yeah. And what was so funny about Thriller is Thriller was a mini movie, not just a music video when they were cool. And a lot of people had MTV yet. But in our neighborhood where I was living at the time, there's this one rich family, which was amazing because they didn't have exactly the best housekeeping. It was really odd. But anyway, there's this one family, and they were one of the first families I knew of that could afford a VCR, even back then in the early 80s. People were starting to get them, and they had the cable. Somehow they had satellite. I think it was satellite they had, right? And they had recorded the Thriller thing, the Thriller video. So there'd be like about five, six, seven of us, and we'd be riding around all day, and we would end up going to that house and asking them if we could watch Thriller. And to their credit, they never really act like we were getting on their nerves, but they would sit there and let us watch Thriller. You know, it was a big deal back then. I also like to say that I embarrassed my son in 2010 when I lived in Roanoke, Virginia, because we went down to the downtown area just to hang out, see what was going on. And lo and behold, they were holding they were trying to break the world record for the most people doing the Thriller dance at once. They had their camera set up. They had a whole lot of people that showed up with the choreography taking over the streets. And they were linked up with other people across the country, if and maybe not a few other countries, who were all going to be doing the Thriller dance at the same time. I ended up jumping out there, and I think I just devastated my son when I did that. I still remember the dance. Okay, Brian Craig says, "Yo, Jimbo is good too. You got good taste." You can thank Scott Connor for turning me on to that. I knew who Steve Sky was. I knew who Yo Jimbo was. It was Scott Connor there who got me to finally read it, and he bought me a trade, the fifth edition phone book that Dark Horse put out when we were at a comic book convention. Was that in Raleigh or Winston Salem, North Carolina? Any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles covers? I have a Von Bode cover that I have put up somewhere because I had this Teenage Mutant Ninja. It's from the first series from Rod Studios, and on the cover of it, I saw the cartoon females they had on there with the turtles and stuff. And when I finally unfolded it, because of course it was a wraparound cover, I saw that it was by Von Bode, and I about fell down. So yeah, I'm sure there is the first issue, number 1. I would definitely hang that one up. That's a piece of history there. Okay, here we go. Now, this is one of the things, for some reason, when I see Bernie Wrightson at almost any other company than DC, for some reason, I mean, one of the first places I actually saw Bernie was Swamp Thing #2 with Len Wein. Before I even knew who it was. Bernie Wrightson is one of those people I recognized the style before I knew who the name was because I was just a kid, right? But I also saw his stuff in Heavy Metal Freak Show or something like that. Traveling Carnival of Freaks and stuff like that. His stuff put a dent in my brain. His art, where I knew who he was before I knew his name and put it together over the years that this was all the same guy, right? So when I see him at other companies, even with Marvel and stuff, it's so odd for me. It's so odd. It doesn't register. But I pick up these Gargoyle. I don't even know if I have all 4 of these yet. I've had them before. I have no idea if I have all 4 or not. I have to go through one of my boxes. I have a box of just 2 boxes of just miniseries and stuff. But in 1985, he did these fantastic painted covers for the Gargoyle. Miniseries were what, about three or 4 years out from really getting going. So these were new, and apparently they really wanted to do things they were awkward. A lot of the miniseries were awkward. They were trying to give characters who had been supporting characters and stuff, put them in the limelight. So a few times they were kind of odd until they got the hang of it. But Bernie Wrightson did some fantastic covers. If he's painting monsters, I'm there. It's fantastic stuff. Now, this is one where in my head, I had a Mike Golden cover. Oh, wait a minute. Look at this. I told you I had 2 or 3 of these. Let me just put this to the side. Okay. All right. But yeah, I had some Mike Golden covers. I got a Mike Golden Batman special with a character called the Wraith in it that I want to bring out here, but I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Now, this one right here is a Sergeant Rock cover. Out of nowhere, there's a war cover. And there's something about this cover that just speaks to me. It feels very Watchmen-like. Maybe it's where, it reminds me of the Doomsday Clock here. It's a Joe Kubrick cover. But there's just definitely a mood with it. And I think this is one of those pieces that you can interpret it and it'll mean something to everybody a little bit different if they slow down and really think about it and look at it, right? For me, I feel like but I'm just going to go ahead and show it to you. But I got this book probably about 3 or 4 years ago. The last couple of years have been flying by. I'm at that age and stuff, so I'm not real sure how long I've had this. This is definitely from the 80s. But there's so much going on in this book. First of all, those yellows and reds, of course, make it pop. So you're going to notice it on a newsstand, a spinner rack back then, you know. But then you look at it, and he's getting shot at. There's this big clock. It kind of gives you the idea he's running out of time. The doomsday clock. It's got a Watchman feel for it to me. Of course, the big watch and stuff, right? So this is one of those odd books that just stick out, and I'm sort of trying to figure out why. There's so much, you know. You start looking at it there, and you see that he's, you know, look what he's using as a crutch, a bazooka. His leg is messed up. He's tore up. And then you get into his face, and of course, it's that Kubert. Kubert is very subtle with his art. He can do so much with so few pencil strokes. You know what I mean? Joe Kubert is one of those guys that you probably don't appreciate until you sit down and try to draw like him, in my opinion, if he's new to you and you don't know who he is. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah, Scott Connor. Mike Golden has some really great covers. Yeah, I'm starting to appreciate him. During the Purge, I got a lot of his Micronaut stuff out, and I really looked at some of those things, you know, kind of trying to figure out why people are into him. But you know about the Great G.I. Joe yearbook I've been trying to get complete of his. Ross Sanders, yeah. Bernie Wrightson worked with Stephen King on Silver Bullet, Cycle the Werewolf. Yeah, I remember seeing some. I remember just kind of picking up the books wherever they were on sale at, just to see the art, and then I put them back. Yeah, Defenders, I think, was Sal from 1984. That was a very odd time for the Defenders, which was kind of wild. It's its own book. I actually think they should have had a new number one for that. Okay, so now here's something that's off the beat. This is Continuity Comics. It's Neil Adams, of course, and somebody, Rudy Nebris or somebody, I think, has inked over this. But this is when they were this is when they were saying that this was an unrippable comic, a cover. And I had another one of these where I wanted to see it, so I went on the back page just in case that it would rip. And apparently they didn't treat the back of it. All right. But there's just something about Neil Adams drawing monsters. I don't know if it's this old House of Mystery, House of Secrets covers, or whatever what he was doing. I'm really trying to wrap my brain around some actual monsters that he drew. But to me, nobody was able to ever draw a werewolf better than Neil Adams. Now, I know a lot of people are, you know, his Avengers, his Deadman, his Batman stuff, Ra's al Ghul. I'm going to be saying Ra's al Ghul now because on Facebook, Neil Adams has been doing live shows. And I think he's auctioning off art that he does on Facebook when you watch him. And the last live show I was trying to watch by Neil Adams was just a few days ago. And he stopped everything and said, "It is Ra's. It's American. R-A apostrophe S. It is Ra's al Ghul." And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I was just sort of like, apparently that's been touchy for him because I think it was the Bruce Timm Batman cartoon back in the 90s where they started saying Roz, you know, Raz, Roz or something, right? He was saying he is not Hebrew, is what he said. And I was like, wow. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I just love these monsters. The top of this will glow in the dark. So maybe the unrippable covers and another stunt they did a few months later in Continuity Comics, but I ended up ripping the back of it. But yeah, this glows in the dark at the top here. But like I said, nobody does. I love werewolves when Neil Adams does them. It's a weird little thing I've noticed over the years. But he's got it. These are some of the best werewolves. I mean, I love my Mike Ploog, but Mike Ploog really went back to the Lon Chaney years. To me, this is when they were monsters. You know, Rise of Magic there where we kind of see it. So yeah, to me, yeah, Neil Adams has been around for a while. Meeting him has really sort of done that thing to where it's kind of tarnished his artwork for me. And I was really never really a Neil Adams nut, but when he does something, now we're going way back. We're going to Charlton Comics. Okay, we're going back to the 70s here. Stuff that I really like these covers, right? I think Charlton 66 sent me this or gave this to me, or maybe I found it in a back issue bin or something. But anyway, I love these painted covers. They used the secondary covers back then, and when you know these artists who the color palette that they used in the 60s and 70s are a little bit off to where they have a whole mood of their own. They feel old. They feel dated in a good way. And what's amazing about this one is that I've never read this book. I have no idea if this cover even has anything to do with the story, but we have the tattered American flag, the Constitution of the United States behind there, and the Phantom, the ghost who walks. So this is, to me, this is just a fantastic. I love these old pulp feeling covers where they just went in there and they just painted them. That's one of the strengths I think that Gold Key and Charlton Comics had were the covers. But something about this, I just love this. I want tons and tons of art in this style, right? Which goes back to the second one that I'm going to get here, the Phantom Kirby. And this is a book called Baron Werewolf's Haunted Library. And he totally, totally looks like the lost brother or cousin of Cain and Abel from House of Mystery and House of Secrets. It even looks like in this book that he's holding the Book of Destiny or something, right? But I guess, he's the librarian there, right? But look at this freaking cover. I've shown this before. I've had this forever. And I loved like the greens that they use and the blues, the hues. He's surrounded by goblins and stuff. The look on his face of arrogance. The moon back there. I mean, it's Halloween. This book just says Halloween all year round. And when I hang this up, this is going to be front and center. If I knew a company or a person who could scan this cover and give me a gigantic poster of it, I would so be there. But I love this cover. I don't even want it cleaned up. It's one of those covers that the more it ages, it actually adds to the flavor of the book, which I think is fantastic. It's fantastic. All right, what we got here? John C. is here. Scott Neely, hey, it's Phantom from the Platinum Age. Phantom's been around for a long time. He started out in Sunday strips, in comic strips and stuff, right? So you might want to Google him and look at he's been published everywhere, other countries in America, had a film here in the 90s that I didn't think was that bad, considering what it's supposed to be. Scott Connor, Phantom was actually the first costume superhero. I could see that. Paulo Costa, the Phantom comic strip began in 1936. Scott Neely, February 17th. Okay, they're talking about this. Paulo Costa is a big fan of the Phantom. When I was a little kid, it ran in a newspaper my dad bought. I'm a fan of all those old comic strip dudes, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician. And it blew my mind when I was a kid that they actually had a cartoon come out of these King features. In my mind, they were King features characters and stuff like that, the pulp feel they had with them. And it blew my mind when Defenders of the Earth, the cartoon and the comic through, what was it, Star Comics. I have number 1 and 2 in there somewhere, came out. I was like, this is just bizarre. I had very low expectations. But it was kind of cool that somebody went for it. I got one more cover here that I have here, but like I said, I could probably go in there and play around with my comics and come up with 20 more. Now, if you want to look at my older videos and stuff, I have my top 10 comic book covers, my top 10 cover stories. There was a challenge where we picked 25, best comic book covers or something. You could probably just put Howler Mouse and comic book covers and it would come up. But I've probably done about 3 or 4 videos over the years and stuff, getting really into some comic book covers. Defenders of the Earth, people remember it. Nice. I wonder who chose the purple coloring for the costume. In his first strip, Lee Falk described it as gray. There's no telling what was going on. The color palette back then, was very limited. I mean, we know this, in comic books, it was, they call them 4-color comics and stuff, even in comic books and strips and stuff. But it always, that's the second time I've heard of a character originally being gray and they changed it. Like I said, the Hulk started out as gray and they turned him to green. Nice. Now, this last one I don't think is going to blow you away, but it's actually something that I really like. I would like to know what they did to this cover to make it happen. I like art where I saw one of the Kuberts kind of play around with this, and it's probably from when I was a kid because I did the same thing. Is when you take a paper bag, grocery bag that's brown, and I did this as a kid, just to have something to draw on and stuff like that. But you take off-colored paper. Now, I've seen people use techniques in mixed media where they take tea or coffee and they stain their paper that they're going to draw on and things like that. But you get your old garbage, get your old, if you guys can remember when groceries came in brown paper bags. and it was a rough paper, and I would draw on that, and it was like get my white crayons out to highlight it. I mean, I'm like a little kid, and it seems like I could do more on a piece of paper that wasn't white, which was amazing, and do something with this because there was a texture and a grain to it that inspired me. So I've always kind of been a sucker for that, where you get darker paper and draw on it. And of course, this looks like it's been scanned or something. I don't know what they did with it, but this is an absolute beautiful cover for Lock and Key #4. I'm going to assume this is from the first miniseries. I'm not sure. But this is The Watershed. And when they have Lock and Key pop up next month on Netflix, or if you've already read the Lock and Key books, you'll know the significance of it and the significance of that person peering at you through the window. But this cover is just fantastic. I love the whites. I like the off-white of the actual paper. I like the painted feel of the medium. Even the gold lettering makes it pop, which was fantastic. It's one of the few times that the logo, to me, doesn't really interfere with the art. But I just love this technique. It's not so much about this one popping on the newsstand. It's about the detail. You can look in there, the pink and ink feel. And actually, this says 1998. I didn't think Lock and Key had come out until the mid-2000s. What is the deal with that? Yeah. This art has been signed as it was done in 1998. I assure you, Lock and Key, the story was not out in 1998. This is the first printing from 2008. So that's 10 years before the book came out. That's amazing. Cool. So that's just a few comic books that I'm thinking about trying to get framed if I can get some room and figure out what to do. But I'm always going through my comics, and like I said, in my other videos, I've talked about people who just collect covers and variant covers, and they get them CGC'd, and it's almost like getting giant trading cards. And I just want to assure you that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but with me, there's nothing like a good piece of art. Every now and then you get something that feels like high art on a hobby in a medium that's considered lowbrow, to where you can come in and it'll set a mood in a house or become a conversation piece where you can see more into it. It connects with you, gets a reaction. And then sometimes it's just pretty. I mean, let's face it, it's just pretty. They've done well. Soft blues, things like that. It's fun stuff, man. Scott Neely. Well, gray makes more sense for the ghost, but I think they wanted him to pop in color. Scott Neely said he used to play Q*bert. Yeah. Actually, I think I have Q*bert on in there somewhere I can play. Joe Q*bert has some really nice covers drawn on tinted gray papers. Exactly. Yeah, I love that stuff. I think it's like the mixed media stuff I find just fascinating. It's like there's other stuff that I've seen people do where they change the color of the paper and the tone. They do this fantastic piece of art, if you will, and it's like they destroy it by going over it with something else. If I had my way about it, I would love to get a whole bunch of maps, road maps, atlas maps, whatever. And I like to go over them with like stained tea and just turn them into wallpaper, put them on one wall in a room of nothing but maps and stuff. Okay, guys, I think that's about it. Again, we're a little bit past that hour mark, which is fine. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thumbs up, sub, let people know we're out here. Because we've had some outstanding numbers for this little tiny channel. Cool choices, sir. This is Dr. Silver Age. I don't think I can narrow it down because there's so many great covers over the last 60 years. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. And I've collected comics enough to where I feel like I can spot something. I don't get overwhelmed by all the covers that have been done and looking at my whole collection. When something pops, I don't overthink it. I just pull it out, keep it around for a while, and then I start figuring out why I like it. Ross Sanders, it says not 1998. It says 1998, plain as can be, at least on the cover art. Somebody might have had this art and had just had it setting around. I don't know what the deal is. I'm actually wanting to go back and look at this. But yeah, 1998's what they have on there. See if it's going to focus. Yeah, 98. So somebody had that sitting around for quite a while. All right. Okay, guys, be excellent to each other. And all right, guys, thanks a lot. And be excellent to each other. And like I said, like the video, share it, let people know we're here. Take care, guys. Be excellent to each other.